60s also. Yeah, no, who was it who was saying that Egyptian hieroglyphics are also mantra? Is that Vladimir?
I don't think so.
Maybe it was Shrathalu.
Could be.
Yeah.
In what sense mantra? Yes. Hieroglyphics
or maybe
do
maybe the pictures.
sound.
Yeah. I remember there's some striking similarity to Sanskrit, or maybe it was the root values. Anyway, it's too speculative till my memory revives.
Yeah, the difference between the pentagrammic hieroglyphic languages, they are visual languages, and articulatory languages, such as Sanskrit, Indo-European languages, is huge. One is depicting the picture within the sign. Others are articulating the meanings, and by those articulations of the meanings, assign them to describe any reality, inner or outer. And these are two different approaches to language. Yeah?
So would Egyptian hieroglyphics and Chinese both be counted as pictographic?
In a way, yes, because they draw pictures in a way, yes, because
Chinese being much more
is isolative
abstract.
type, is a bit different type.
It's more abstract.
But yes, abstract, but it is built, it seems that there are kind of references that in the ancient times, they were heating up the cover of the, what do you call it, of the tortoise, the shell, and how shell was cracking. It was shamanic culture, which was giving them the sign of how to read the reality or the intention. And from there, they started to use this as the beginning of their hieroglyphs or their signs, yes, in Chinese.
Hitting the tortoise shell, was that Egyptian?
Cracking in a particular way, giving the sign what to do, how to react, what it means. Yeah. So it's built on deeply shamanic culture, relations with nature. In terms of, some of us are using the coffee. You know that coffee when you drink
coffee grind?
And then what picture on the coffee, some people look and say what it means.
Yeah,
what
it's like tea leaves.
Expect.
So which culture used heating the tortoise shell?
That is pre-Chinese culture, it seems, shamanic, from which these signs came into existence. This is one of the beliefs within Chinese culture. Yeah. So that... and then, of course, the complications. There are simple symbols, and when they are combined, they build new symbols. Yeah? Anyhow, it's a very different way to describe reality than to articulate sounds, which are corresponding to certain psychological states by the very articulation. Yeah? And then assigning them to particular phenomena or reality or state of consciousness.
Yeah, within those, the roots of Sanskrit, I can see being related to these basic spiritual, psychological principles or tendencies. But then when you get into the conjugations and declensions, can those also be analyzed?
This is something else. This is the mental creation, yes? The mind. Mental categories. By the way, they are universal. They are in all the languages. It seems that the mind is using the same categories, but they are differently expressed. So semantic and syntactic forms of language are always different. Panini distinguished those, yes. One is the form of language and other is what it means. But on the semantic level, we have a universal grammar, which corresponds to all grammars in the world. Why? Because you have to have the subject, object, and their relations. You can't really avoid that.
Yeah, because when the European uh, philologists, linguists, encountered the Sanskrit structure, the declensions and conjugations, they must have immediately seen that the same, or all of the same cases or declensions, and most of the same verb tenses and mood, active, passive. In the Sanskrit, you have the middle. So very.
Unfortunately, yes, linguists are not so clever after all. It's an interesting topic. It's a big topic.
Yeah.
Since I'm kind of educated in general linguistics, of course, I would be happily kind of going into that direction, but I don't want to drag you into that. But one thing I will say, that they are not clever enough to see that there is actually all the cases, all the grammatical, or these, let us say, semantic relations within the text have to be covered in order for us to function. So all of these cases, nominative, accusative, instrumental, which are in Sanskrit, yes, dative, ablative, genitive, and locative, 7 cases, are everywhere. Only they are differently expressed through different forms. When I studied Norwegian language, our teacher Norwegian said, we don't have instrumental case in Norwegian language. This is a linguist talking to me. I said, how come? How could you express the house is built by someone or with someone you go home? How? Because this is instrumental case. With some instrument, you do something, yeah? So you may not have it in your structure, in your thinking that you have it, but you use it all the time. So this is the problem of, not finding the formulation of it and thinking that it does not exist. In Latin, there are 4 cases, not 4, 7. Everywhere, 7 cases. You cannot avoid to have all these 7 cases. You cannot.
Right.
Otherwise, the language would not be functional in full sense, and our mind would not be capable of dealing with physical reality.
Yeah, that seems to be a strong argument. The commonality of cases, it seems to be a strong argument for innate language ability. But still, in computational linguistics, it's a big argument whether language is innate or acquired.
That is something else, yes.
Yeah.
All languages are acquired.
but they seem to be, if you say they're acquired, you still have to admit there must be some innate limits in terms of what.
Definitely. Mind, yes. How you express the mind. You have different linguistic possibilities. You can learn one system of expressing the mind, another system, languages. Languages are these forms by which mind can express itself. But within the mental operations, there are certain semantic entities which are indispensable for the mind to function. Yeah. Cannot avoid it, something like subject object, time causality, and these things are there. So, and they are projected in grammar, and grammar is treating them in different ways, and that's why we have so many different types of grammatical languages. We have synthetic, analytic, agglutinative, isolative. All these are different types of grammars. And still, they express something universal of the mind. Yeah? Differently, in a different way. They invented different tools, and by different tools, they express the same semantic categories.
Very interesting. Yeah. Well, I didn't want to get on a detour from that subject matter.
Right. Well, I hope it wasn't too long. It was.
Oh, no, it's beautiful.
Okay. Great. Okay, let's then start with mantra. Om Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yat Kripa Tammaham Vande Paramananda Madhavam. So we stopped at verse 7. Verse 7, chapter 12, Bhakti Yoga. Iccha-dvesha sukha-duhkha samghata chetana dhriti etat kshetram samasena savikaram udahritam. Now we are coming to the description of Kshetra, liking and disliking, pleasure and pain. These are the principal deformations of Kshetra, of our field which we perceive in life. What is this life? We perceive something there, something is there, and these are the distortions, deformations. Consciousness, collocation, persistence, these, briefly described, constitute the field and its deformations. There are several footnotes. Footnote number 1 for the pleasure, for sukha. From the Vedantic point of view, we may say that pleasure and pain are the vital or sensational deformations given by the lower nature, lower energy, to the spontaneous ananda or delight of the spirit when brought into contact with her workings. Energy, her workings. These dualities are the positive and negative terms in which the ego soul of the lower nature enjoys the universe. It's a very dense statement, actually. Everything is here packed. If we want to unpack, we can dwell on it. From the Vedantic point of view, we may say that pleasure and pain are the vital or sensational deformations given by the lower energy to the spontaneous ananda or delight of the spirit when brought into contact with her workings. So when the spontaneous ananda and delight comes in contact with the workings of its energy, these are the deformations necessary for the workings in the lower nature, in the nature where the consciousness is limited. So they are the outcome of that limitation of awareness, and they turn to be pleasure and pain. Pain is misplacement of ananda, and pleasure is placement of ananda in proper context in that moment of time. These dualities are the positive and negative terms in which the ego soul of the lower nature enjoys the universe. Positive and negative terms in which the ego soul of the lower nature enjoys the universe. Quite beautiful. And then consciousness. There is a general consciousness that first informs and then illumines the energy in its works. So what is consciousness? Here is the definition. First, it informs the energy which works, and energy is that very part of that very consciousness. It illumines it, informs it of what is to be done, the willpower, and then illumines, gives it all the connections, all the comprehensive movement is determined by some light of consciousness within the energy. There is a faculty of that consciousness by which energy holds together the relations of objects, while all the objects are related and held together. There is, too, a continuity, a persistence of the subjective and objective relations of our consciousness with its objects. These are the necessary powers of the field. All these are common and universal powers at once of the mental, vital, and physical nature. I can say only wow. If we read slowly, it's really knowledge in itself. Sri Aurobindo has this ability to speak very precisely and very comprehensively. Precise and comprehensive expression. Everything is there in its right position and place. Today I read this because I was thinking how to present this topic, and I thought, look at this beauty. Immediately, boom, the presence. Everything is explained of consciousness. Consciousness power is one and the same movement, yes? But it has an element of knowledge and an element of power. So there is a general consciousness that first informs and then illumines the energy of its own workings in its works. There is a faculty of that consciousness by which energy holds together the relations of objects. There is a power which is kind of building the context of relations, and not simply relations, but comprehensive relations. Comprehensive in the light of knowledge, in the light of that which illumines, informs and illumines. There is too a continuity of those relations, a persistence of the subjective and objective relations of our consciousness with its objects. And these objects are the result of the workings of that energy. I know we can get lost here, but this is so beautiful that one wants to come back again and again because it's a perfect definition of consciousness. There are the necessary powers of the field. All these are common and universal powers at once of the mental, vital, and physical nature. This is even more something more difficult. It's all pervasive from the mental to the physical. It's like within the physical there is a vital, within the vital there is a mental. And all this physical is determined by the mental and vital within it.
Hello?
Okay, that is about consciousness. And the last one, these
Hello?
all. Unless you want to say something, please do.
Yes.
Just interrupt and say.
Hello, Vladimir.
Yes?
This is why we can say consciousness is the context.
As a power, yes.
The context where is the power is manifesting, but consciousness is the context.
Okay, it's a context where there is one part is comprehending how this context is comprehensive, meaningful, and the other part in it is holding it in power, in relations.
There is another word to maybe the same is when we say the field. The field and the context could be the same, synonymous.
Yeah. The field and the context and consciousness within that field, which built the field and now illumines it, informs it, deals with it, is it. only we do not see it. The very idea that we come to know something is inbuilt in this understanding, yes? So how can I discover something? Oh, now I know. How is that even possible if I didn't know before? So I already knew it somewhere within me. And now I arrived at that knowledge within me. And finally, I matched with this context, within that knowledge within me.
For me, is more challenging if I observe or I achieve the acceptance of what is in my conscious is the context, and the context which I can observe is my consciousness. There is no context without consciousness, and without context, there is not possible to have consciousness. I don't know if I have using the proper words, but what I can have in consciousness is because there is a context. If there is not context, there is no consciousness. That makes sense for you?
Yeah, because consciousness always perceives the being, and the context is the kshetra of the being. Now look at this. There are two elements here which are mentioned. There is kshetra, and there is this distortion.
Kshetra is Kurukshetra. It's a part of Kurukshetra. What is Kshetra?
Kshetra is the field. We read the chapter, the field and the knower of the field. Oh, we didn't yet. We will read chapter 13, sorry. Chapter 13 will be the field and the knower of field. So the field is what we perceive, and the knower of field is that which perceives or knows. So notice this, iccha-dvesha sukha-duhkha. These are, Sri Aurobindo assigns them to the distortion in the field. Savikaram, together with vikara, is a distortion. But samghata, chetana, dhriti, these are the kshetra qualities. Do you see how he beautifully translates?
Is kshetra are those normally taken as subjective and objective?
As
Or
object.
okay. So
And
field is objective.
is the subject, yes.
Yeah.
So that object which we constantly perceive by consciousness, that context about which Siegfried was talking, has specific characteristics. Samghata, that means collocation, interesting, collocation, yes? Putting together, locating together, contextualizing. This is Siegfried, your thing. Putting it into context, in relations, yeah? In space. Persistence, interesting. It has to persist. It cannot disappear next moment. In time, it has to hold together this collocation. And consciousness, the perception of it, or comprehension of it. Comprehension, context, and endurance. These three are the characteristics of Kshetra. So any object which is created by consciousness power implies the presence of consciousness within that object. Yeah? Otherwise, how? How this can be can? Can means that it can contain some juice, some water, something, some liquid, which is for drinking, and the whole made in such a way that it would fit into the mouth very comfortably. So this is the meaning of it, yeah? Otherwise, this object would not be what it is, what we call a can, if that would not do that. Yeah? So it is doing something. It has a particular purpose, meaning in relation to my hand, to my mouth, to my body, to the water to the earth, gravitation pulling water down. That means bottom or top is open, bottom is closed. All that together is a very comprehensive, put together things, samghata, and it is comprehensive, chetana, and it is holding in time, dhriti. It persists. It is not giving up its shape, its meaning easily. You have to smash it. You have to apply a lot of energy to change its purpose, its meaning, its application. Maybe I'm speaking something very ordinary. Yeah?
No, this is beautiful, but a few words I don't understand. Maybe it would help if I can briefly, if you can let me share the screen. I can show the, let's see,
Okay,
here, my Zoom.
go ahead.
I have to, sorry, I'm on a different screen now. Well, my Zoom's not coming up, hold on. Oh, there we are. I'm sorry, it's not, I've got a
But
Windows
notice
management
that
problem.
in this passage where you are looking, and I gave you permission to project you, and the moment you project, we will talk. Notice that he speaks already about jnana yoga in this bhakti yoga chapter. This is amazing, because next will be Kshetra and Kshetrajna, and we will start jnana yoga section. And in Bhakti Yoga, he already speaks about this, about Kshetra and how it is to be perceived, or with its Vikaras. It's already a topic of Jnana Yoga. So Bhakti Yoga is impossible without Jnana Yoga. That's what I want to say.
Okay, so here's, can you see now this
Yeah.
translation of the Gita, Holy Bhagavad Gita? So it's got the word by word translations here. And so dhriti, he translates as will, but normally dhriti as an
Persistence.
adjective. Yeah, it's that.
It's not adjective, it's actually the noun. Dhriti
Okay.
is the noun, there is steadfastness, steadiness.
Okay.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. So Sri Aurobindo translate as persistence, that holding value. Okay. And then
Samghata aggregate is a very good translation, actually.
but then going back to, I'll stop sharing.
I will stop.
Okay, going back to Sri Aurobindo's translation that you had.
Sri Aurobindo
Yeah.
is very different in many ways, because he has his own view. These words, if you open the dictionary, you will find that every of these words can be translated in hundreds of terms, and you can pick up the term you like, what fits your understanding. That translation, what you were showing, shows me what the person, and many people translate Gita picking up whatever they like from the dictionary. Unfortunately, they don't have that coherence of the meaning. If they could coherently present some meaning, I would follow their interpretation. But they hodgepodge put so many translations. They pick up from there, and then they say, you don't understand. Well, what can we do? You try to understand here.
Well, the three terms that Sri Aurobindo has after the semicolon here, the semicolon after deformations of the Kshetra, he has consciousness, collocation, and persistence. Persistence we related to dhriti.
Yes.
Samghata chetana, it would be a collection of
Yeah,
not quite
collocation.
consciousness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
consciousness, yes. Because
Okay, so
samghata,
yeah, so that's collocation. But which word does he have a particular word that he translates as consciousness, or is that an overall
chetana,
sense?
chetana.
Okay. So, but collocation also, is there another word there that suggests collocation? The samghata,
Collocation is
it would be,
samghata,
yeah, so that's,
consciousness is chetana, and persistence is dhriti.
yeah, so
Just put different order. Yeah.
yeah, co-located consciousness, if you want to take samghata's chetana together.
Well, there
And-
is this shu, there's visarga here, which became shu, so it is a separate.
Oh, okay, right, okay.
All right, let's look into these. Are these three: consciousness, collocation, and persistence, which constitute the field with its deformation. All these things taken together constitute the fundamental character of our first transactions with the world of nature. But it is evidently not the whole description of our being. Which is most probable, that is which is our actuality, but not the limit of our possibilities. There is something beyond to be known, jneyam. And it is when the knower of the field, its next chapter, turns from the field itself to learn of himself within the nature, and of all that is behind its appearances, that real knowledge, then real knowledge begins, or that real knowledge begins jnana. The true knowledge of this field, no less than the knower. And let me read again, somehow I lost the meaning. There is something beyond to be known, jneyam. And it is when the knower of the field turns from the field itself to learn of himself within it and of all that is behind its appearances that real knowledge begins, jnanam, the true knowledge of the field, no less than of the knower of the field. For both soul and nature are the Brahman, but the true truth of the world of nature can only be discovered by the liberated sage who possesses also the truth of the spirit. One Brahman, one reality in self and nature is the object of all knowledge. The Gita tells us what is the spiritual knowledge, or rather, it tells us what are the conditions of knowledge, the marks, the signs of the man whose soul is turned towards the inner wisdom. First, there comes a certain moral condition, a sattvic government of the natural being. Notice, it's all nothing about bhakti, no one word. It's all about knowledge. The last chapter of bhakti, called Bhakti Yoga, is about knowledge. And this is something amazing if we start analyzing how knowledge and devotion are related. So we continue, yes?
Vladimir,
Yes.
what I understand about the last reading is as we can observe the context where we are living, we can see our environment, and we are make an interpretation of our environment where we are. This is what we are. We can connect with what is beyond the beyond the context. Okay, I try to say in another word. I can see the space where I am, but the meaning of what is here in my environment, the things, the objects, the phenomena, the light, the meaning of that, my own perception or my own projection can address me to know what is beyond. And I can go backwards to my inner consciousness to know why I have this perception of this environment. This is what is beyond. And then what I understand with the last sentences is if I can fuse my own perception or my own the meaning which I'm building from the context which I'm observing, if I can fuse both, then I can have the experience of the Brahma.
Yes. By the way, somewhere I have a very good slide, let me check, which explains this inner and outer being. On the faculties of consciousness, I had one slide. Oh, here it is. Very good. I will project and you will see what is actually being said here. It's quite amazing because we take Adhyatma, Adhidaiva, Adhibhuta. Yes? So if I remove Adhidaiva ring from here, I will have Adhyatma, the central innermost being, self, the existent one, and Adhibhuta, the most peripheral being, yes, that in time and space constantly changing and being modified by space and time movement and interaction. But altogether, from Adhyatma to Adhibhuta, this is one self. Adhidaiva, which is within, Adhidaiva, this yellow ring, it is the consciousness with its faculties. They can be turned outside and perceive the context in which we are, the environment, our body, our thoughts maybe not, but let us say our body and physical reality. Adhidaiva, if it looks within Adhidaiva itself, it starts tracing its thoughts, emotions, dealing with its own activities of consciousness in the mental and vital realms. And when it turns beyond them, it is looking for the Kshetra, so to say, of the innermost self. So what I want to say, that all this from the surface reality of Adhibhuta to the innermost Adhyatma, to the center, is the one self, which is viewed in double ways. Either we look outside and then we see it in time and space, or we look within and we see it beyond time and space. The confusion here that in both cases, this is para-prakriti, adhyatma, and this is apara-prakriti, higher and lower prakriti. They are both field. This is amazing. So the innermost self, once it is discovered beyond time and space. And because of that, we can understand what is happening within time and space. We are not bewildered by constant modulation and changes. because we see the correspondence of everything what is on the surface with everything which is not, which is beyond time and space. We see their true values. But who sees? This consciousness sees. So once it looks within and looks without and finds the correspondence, that is the solution. That's what Siegfried was telling. That's why I remembered this slide.
Well, you probably know there's one verse here in chapter 13 that seems to reverse the understanding of the subject of the object of understanding of the of Kshetra and Kshetraya. I don't have it in front of me, but you know the one where, anyway, I'll look it up and bring it up at
Okay.
another time, but it seems that this slide would explain it very well.
Okay. We can look on yes, we can look into it, because Kshetrajna is the as Sri Aurobindo says, there are only two realities, the Lord and the self. The self is Atman and the Lord is Purusha. Purusha is consciousness which perceives itself on all the levels, from the highest transcendental level to the lowest material Purusha. And it will be always Kshetra for him, because he perceives himself, he views himself on all the levels. And this is something which we usually overlook, because we see Kshetra as something lower. It's not lower. It is also higher at the same time.
Vladimir,
Yes.
Aurobindo writes contact with her workings. I was struck by the feminine her. It was beautiful, potent placement, powers, energies, dualities, and then her. And so how do we don't need to. I've been meditating on the word her all night, but are we
Energy.
framing this in a divine masculine, divine feminine conversation as well?
Could be either nature or energy. I believe it's energy. It is she. We need to know this ancient English, you know. Sri Aurobindo uses sometimes those, like he says, the love is, for example, in Savitri, it is he. Yeah? Love is he in the ancient English. I didn't know. I always knew it as it, but it has a gender. It is he, love. Energy is she. Yeah? Nature is she, quite obvious. Can't be he. But in some other languages, it could be different genders. For example, in German, the sun is she, die Sonne, for some reason. And nobody knows why. It should be he, yeah? Or it at least, but not she. But yeah, it's like this. So these are interesting topics of genders. I know for you, her means something more, the mother or something. Yes, right. Devi. Great. Let us go into the next verse. Amanitvam, adambhitvam, ahimsa, kshantir, arjavam. These are all the qualities. Acharyopasanam, shaucham, sthairiam, atma vinigrahah. Here the translation by Sri Aurobindo, a total absence of worldly pride, amanitvam. But there is mana. Mana is the pride, consideration, highly considered, valued, VIP, all that. It's without it, without being VIP, amanitvam, adambhitvam, and pride, arrogance, ahimsa, harmlessness, a candid soul, tolerant, kshanti, forgiving, actually, arjavam, sincere, or sincerity. I think these are the qualities of the soul. Long-suffering and benignant heart. Acharyopasanam shaucham sthairyam atma vinigrahah. Purity of the mind and body. Purity of the mind and body, shaucham. Tranquil firmness and steadfastness, sthairyam, from sthira. Atma vinigrahah, self-control and masterful government of the lower nature. And the heart's worship, given to the teacher, acharya upasanam. This is how he translates. Interesting. Acharya, teacher, upasanam, worship. Upasana, literally not worship, but being close, approaching, being situated nearby, not going away. It's like something is attracting you. You are like a satellite, drawn by the gravitational pull. You cannot move away from your sun. You circle around the sun and can't go away. This is upasana. You're constantly nearby because you are drawn to this being. And that is the worship, the love, all these other words used for it. Yeah? Sri Aurobindo adds here, heart's worship. There is no heart here, but he gives this idea, yes, what it means to be attracted totally to the being, to the teacher. Purity, steadiness, control of oneself, attraction to the teacher. It's a normal thing for the bhakti. This is a bhakti thing. Arjavam, sincerity, or straight nature of being straight and frank and what else? Candid. He's using candid soul, Arjavam. Tolerant, kshanti. Kshanti is actually forgiving. He writes here tolerant. Well, it's the same thing. Tolerating others is forgiving them for what they do wrong, because they do not know what they do. Anyhow, they are driven by nature. Ahimsa, harmlessness. Adambhitvam, the freedom or total absence of arrogance and pride. Amanitvam, absence of worldly pride, and arrogance is adambhitvam. Now we Doug, are you happy with the translation of the words? Okay.
Yeah,
Doug
sorry,
is a Sanskrit scholar.
Vladimir, can you talk about a little bit of the word kshanti and ahimsa? Shanti is the same with the mantra, shanti, shanti, shanti.
No, it's kshanti. It's from ksham yatam. Ksham yatam, forgive. Kshama. Interesting word. I do not know why it is so. Let me check with the dictionary. It might be something interesting to know about why it is that root, or what are kindred roots. Ksha has something to do with dwelling and with locating, and from here to be patient, actually. Do you see the dictionary? No, you don't see, most probably. Wait a minute, I will make it visible. Here, ksham, kshamate, kshamiti, kshamyati. Usually it's in the fourth clause, kshamyati. So, to be patient or composed. to suppress anger. Interesting, yeah? To suppress anger, keep quiet, even to submit to bear patiently, endure, to put up with, to suffer even, to pardon, to forgive anything, to allow, to permit, to suffer, to bear anyone, to resist, to be able to do anything. Some are very interesting, to be able to do anything. So, forgiveness. So you are not restricted by anybody's actions. You are free because you can forgive. Forgive and you shall be forgiven. I remember. And forgiveness has something to do with subjective quality of letting go, yes? Kind of understanding a higher truth of our existence, that there is a divine in charge, that the people are victims of forces of nature. Cannot make everybody responsible for whatever they are, yeah? Because it would be silly. So it has a higher character, forgiveness. It implies knowledge of the supreme, of the divine. It's interesting.
But
All my life we think, yeah.
then this root is very close with shanti.
No, shanti is sh. This is ksh. Very
But
different.
the meaning is very similar, isn't it?
You see, ground earth, as this is what I was thinking about, dwelling earth. So coming to earth, earth is all forgiving, earth is all supporting. Yeah, it is something which is like a dwelling place, holding all. Whoever you are, Rakshasa or divine being, all of them have place in this location. Everything which was once existing has the right to exist forever. So it's that kind of holding, withholding, being powerful enough, free enough to hold and bear all. It's a great power, actually. It's not a small thing. If somebody says, I forgive you, and he doesn't help. It doesn't do the trick. To forgive is a very difficult task. I had this in my life, and I could not believe how difficult it is to find forgiveness. Really, it doesn't come easily. You have to do something with yourself, something big. Some mercy has to come, some grace has to descend to save you from that grudge.
Doesn't it also relate to ego, which is, it's very much enmeshed in the sense of ego.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a simple answer, yes.
Probably what makes it so hard, right?
Such a big ego.
Well, I mean, we all have it, don't we? So it's hard for all of us to truly.
Thank you. Thank you for your support.
I didn't mean at all to imply you specifically, Vladimir, but it's this is part of the challenge, isn't it? We always want to be right.
Right.
We generally want to be right.
Well, smaller cases you can forgive. Yeah, you have enough strength and force and wisdom. Yeah. But big cases where you were betrayed or hurt, in the moment where you didn't, when you never expected it. Even if you do, it hurts you so much. If you do something like this, you can't forgive yourself.
Yeah.
It hangs upon you. This is karmic consequence.
It's so true. You can torment yourself about past deeds.
My father told me once a story which is interesting about forgiveness of himself. He said that once he came home and he didn't find me, I was a small boy, at home, and it was already dark and late. And he was going around looking for me everywhere and couldn't find me in the yard. And then somebody said that somebody saw me there at the bus stop. Oh, he rushed to the bus stop. And there I was, alone, small boy at the bus stop. And he took my ear with strength, and pulled it and pulled through the whole yard home to upstairs and home, and without any word left me. And then later, next day, from our neighbor, he found out that I was asking when my father is coming home, from our neighbor. And they said, we don't know, but the bus stop, most probably he will come with the bus. So I went to wait for my father. When he heard this story, he said he could not forgive himself what he did ever. Whatever explanations, I don't even remember the story, but I don't remember the happening, but I remember the story when he told me already, when I was an adult. So these things happen, and very difficult to undo them for some reason. Something very powerful enters and holds you in that formation.
I like Byron Katie's work on this. Like, she always says that people are innocent, and generally people do what they believe to be right. So like how in your case, you believed something and your father believed something. So both were actually right, like, because both were doing according to their belief system. So everyone does at that moment when we do the action, what's our thought? So according what we think is right, we do that. So actually there is nothing to forgive, because everyone is doing what they believe and thinking what is right at that moment. It's a hard thing to do in life, but actually, like she says, people are innocent because everyone is doing what they think is right. Even the terrorists, they believe there is a cause behind this and a good cause, so they are doing that. So,
or they are driven by the force.
Yeah.
By fear, by this, by anger. They're brainwashed. Yes, there's so many. Correct. You're correct.
But behind the anger also there is a thought, like something of like somebody misdid something, or like something like otherwise anger cannot exist without a thought. So what's that thought? So if they're believing that thought, that's going to create that emotion.
It's interesting how we can misunderstood forgiveness and forget. And
yes, that's how we understand to forget about it. Right.
Yeah, it's not the same.
Not easily forgetting.
Yeah, in the memory constructions, is making in neuroscience perspective, is making us synthesis of proteins. Then the neurogeneration and the plasticity makes something which you can experience as a permanent. This is why memories appear a permanent mental images, and this is our fault in our human construction, because we are dealing with permanent mental images because they are building through synthesis of proteins. And this is why it's so difficult for us to experience life is transitory and changing every time, because we are catching ourselves, our experience, through these permanent mental images in the memory. And this is not possible to forget. And my delight with the integral yoga is to develop the transformation process. Then this is our chance to forgiveness through transformation the memories. If you can transform the meaning of your memories, then you can lose the weight of the emotional experience. It's not possible to forget. The only chance is to transform the meaning of the memories, because the memories are stuck there like a synthesis of proteins. Unless we have some damage in the brain and we lose a part of our brain, it's not possible to forget. They are permanent. Maybe it's not easy for us consciously to link the association of memories, but the memories are there. And this is why it's not possible to forget. Forgiveness has to be a process of transformation of the meaning of what happened in the past time. Transform your interpretation.
I believe there is a big, what you said is so relevant and so true. Forgiving is actually transforming all those energies, straightening up, putting them in the right place, finding the right solution for everyone, finding the truth in every movement, yeah? And locating them where it should be, absolutely. And when Jesus says, coming back to Jesus, because he is mainly about forgiveness, says that he took all the sins of man onto himself, is exactly this, forgiving. Yeah, forgiving means straightening up, locating, let us say, kshanti, from ksham, the kshama, the earth, the location, the kind of establishing it in the right position to other beings. And in that sense, this is forgiving. So once forgiving energy, transformative forgiving energy enters, it changes the world. People lose their, wrong position, and they find themselves in their dharmic position. That's why they followed him. He saved Magdalena and so on, Maria, who had to be killed. So he saved many people who, from the point of view of human beings, were guilty. And for him, they were not. They were just, they needed help of that energy, transformative energy, which could put them into their proper right position. And that's it. And then they are free. They are free. It's freeing the being from the wrong energy. This is forgiving. It's a very great power, and it's not so easy to getting back to it. Not so easy to do. I tried. A few people I could not forgive. I could forget, actually. It's easier to forget. I forget about it. Yeah. But whenever I come back to that moment, what happened, you see everything. Yeah. So it's not about even me. It's some kind of injustice of that kind. It's not that I was just the present in that moment. I was involved, yes. But if it would happen to anybody, I have the same feeling, It's not only that it happened to me. So maybe it's like ego, which takes responsibility for others, also for other egos. Right? By the way, I'm much more touched and moved by the injustice done to others. And many people are so. Did you notice that? Some people, when they are captured to find out some truth, like in the war or something, they are tortured and they would never give the truth away, yes, but then they bring other person to torture, and they immediately say everything what is needed, not to torture others, not to be the cause for others to be tortured. So this is a very common thing for people somehow. So it has some roots, deep roots in us, this transformative energy. I loved what you did, Siegfried. Thank you for this. It's really transformative energy, forgiving. It frees the person, frees you from that grudge, from that knot of energy which is holding you, which is not letting you be. It's straightening up something, becoming like again free to fly.
Yeah, maybe forgiveness is to give another context, to give another location. Maybe you can transform your point of view.
Maybe I don't know how to
Complement,
really.
complement. Maybe it's a yes, but we need the realization of the emptiness, wisdom, and it's more easy to see how the complement are the polarities.
It's quite interesting that forgive is a composed word, you notice. There is no concept of forgiving. There has to be for giving, giving for something, yes? There's some kind of, or before, giving before it is really there. So kind of securing or ensuring the truth when the truth is not yet there, something like this, yeah? And that corrects the position of the being. Very good. I never thought for giving. Yes, actually, giving will be there with for prefix. So we can look into this word in English. Maybe we will get some new insight. All right. We are over time. Let us stop here for today. If you have some thoughts, somebody wants to say something, it's fine. Please go ahead. If not, I'm closing with mantra because we are over time. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayah Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. By the way, this is the greatest forgiving. May all be happy, yes? all inclusive of all beings. Sarve Santo Niramaya. May all be without any disease or residue which is pulling us down, making us unconscious, making us weak and dead at the end. Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, may all see only auspicious and beautiful things. Ma Kaschit, and no one, Dukkha Bhag, partaking of suffering, Bhavet, should be. So, with these mantras, we forgive, we forgive the whole and all. Thank you. See you then.